Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. In Myanmar, over 90 people have been killed by security forces in the deadliest day of anti-coup protests. The heightened violence coincides with the annual military parade, where the army chief pledged to hold elections without giving any time frame. More than 400 people have been killed in the crackdown since the February 1st coup. In Pakistan, the minister in charge of the pandemic control says the country could soon cross levels seen during the first wave of coronavirus in June last year. Addressing a media briefing, Asad Umar warned of tougher restrictions if the current surge in infections is not controlled. Pakistan is in the grip of a third wave and reported 67 deaths and 4,468 cases, its highest single-day increase since June. Globally, there are more than 126 million infections and over 2.7 million deaths. China has called on the UK to correct its mistakes after an exchange of sanctions. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in London said Beijing does not stir up trouble but is not afraid of it. Earlier, Britain joined the EU and the US in imposing curbs on China over alleged human rights abuses. Beijing responded by sanctioning several British politicians and academics. Iran and China have signed an agreement on economic cooperation for the next 25 years. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi finalized the agreement in a meeting with his Iranian counterpart Javad Zarif in Tehran. Indian batting great Sachin Tendulkar says he has contracted the novel coronavirus. In a tweet, the former batsman said he was suffering from mild symptoms and had isolated himself at home. And in tennis, top seed Russian Daniil Medvedev has cruised into the third round of the Miami Open. The world number 2 overpowered Taiwan's Liu Yan-sun 6-2, 6-2. Meanwhile, Britain's Cameron Norrie knocked out Bulgarian Grigor Dimitrov with a 7-5 and 7-5 win. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In Myanmar, over 90 people have been killed by security forces in the deadliest day of anti-coup protests as the US blasts the military for murdering civilians. The heightened violence coincides with the annual military parade where the army chief pledged to hold elections without giving any time frame. He said the military would protect the people and strive for democracy. But deposed lawmakers described the day as a shame for the army. The international pressure on coup leaders has increased this week with new US and European sanctions targeting military-owned companies. The country plunged into chaos after the military seized power and arrested elected leaders on the 1st of February. Over 400 people have now been killed in the crackdown since then. China has called on the UK to correct its mistakes after an exchange of sanctions. In a statement, the Chinese embassy in London said Beijing does not stir up trouble but is not afraid of it. It said China hopes the British side will take concrete actions for the sound development of bilateral relations. Earlier, Britain joined the EU and the US in imposing sanctions on China over alleged human rights abuses. Beijing responded by sanctioning several British politicians and academics. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and US President Joe Biden voiced concerns about the retaliatory action by China. Iran and China have signed an important agreement on economic cooperation for the next 25 years. Beijing's Foreign Minister Wang Yi finalized the agreement in a meeting with his Iranian counterpart Javad Zarif in Tehran. Iran's foreign ministry says the treaty also pertains to Tehran's participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. Spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh cited the deal as a roadmap for economic cooperation with a special focus on the private sectors of the two sides. Well, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said China's relations with Iran will be permanent and strategic. Beijing also said Iran is a key country on the Belt and Road Initiative and one of the major oil exporters to China. The cooperation document was first discussed in 2015 when Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Iran. Brazil has reported record high COVID-19 deaths yet again as more than 3,600 lost their lives overnight. Globally, there are more than 2.7 million fatalities and over 126 million cases. More in this report.
As vaccine disparities in the poor and rich world grow, 181 UN member states voted for the political declaration on equitable global access to COVID-19 vaccines. This comes as the World Health Organization announced it will release a final report on virus origins in the next few days. In the U.S., the White House says the number of vaccine doses administered in a day has jumped by a record 3.38 million. But in Southern America, the situation is not so promising, as Brazil's outbreak spins out of control. The most populous state, Sao Paulo, registered more than half of the country's daily deaths.
It is a request I make to every Brazilian: wear the face mask. The government will work to obtain enough vaccines to immunize our population. We're importing oxygen trucks from Canada. We've made every effort to provide strategic supplies.
Over in Europe, Poland has broken its record of new confirmed infections for the third day in a row. The European Commission expressed optimism after the German court abruptly stopped the country from ratifying the $885 billion EU recovery fund. France has accused the UK of blackmail against EU, saying London is under pressure because it lacks doses for second vaccine shots. Paris has also tightened classroom closure protocols in the high-risk regions.
À partir de la semaine prochaine,
from next week on, for the 19 French departments that will henceforth be under enforced restrictions, we will close each class after the first case of contamination. It's a very important measure, and that will bear consequences of more classes closed. Of course, in the departments that we mentioned, that means a closing of a class as soon as the first case is detected, and that will apply for all school levels.
Over in Asia, Japan reported its highest daily cases since early February, less than a week after Tokyo lifted a state of emergency. Meanwhile, developing countries are scrambling to keep their inoculations on track after India abruptly restricted vaccine exports.
In Pakistan, the minister in charge of the pandemic control says the country could soon cross levels seen during the first wave of coronavirus in June last year. Addressing a media briefing, Asad Umar warned of tougher restrictions if the current surge in infections is not controlled. He stressed the need to follow precautionary measures to deal with the situation. Pakistan is in the grip of a third coronavirus wave and reported 67 deaths and 4,468 cases, its highest single-day increase since June. It has so far recorded 14,158 deaths and nearly 650 infections since the first case was reported in February last year. Indian batting great Sachin Tendulkar says he has contracted the novel coronavirus. In a tweet, the former batsman said he was suffering from mild symptoms and had isolated himself at home. Tendulkar retired from the professional game in 2013 after notching 100 international centuries in a prolific 24-year career. He returned to the crease recently as captain of India Legends team in a promotional event in Chhattisgarh state. Indian forces have killed more than 300 people in occupied Jammu and Kashmir during the 600-day siege. The extrajudicial killing have continued since New Delhi revoked the Beverly Special status on August the 5th, 2019. A report reveals Indian troops killed most of the victims in fake encounters. The report pointed out that nearly 2,000 people have been injured and more than 14,000 detained. The troops also damaged houses and molested over 100 women during this period. As it comes, the Indian troops again conducted cordon and search operations in Kupwara and Kulgam districts. They carried out house-to-house searches, subjecting civilians to harassment. Indians are voting in 2 eastern states with Muslim majority in a key test for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi's party is being challenged by months-long farmers' protest and a fresh wave of the pandemic. More than 200 candidates are contesting the elections in Assam's 47 constituencies, while in the West Bengal, voters are deciding the fate of 191 candidates across 30 constituencies. Long queues were seen outside polling booths and some lodged complaints about glitches in electronic voting machines. It is the first phase of the voting in both the states and the results won't be known for months. In Bangladesh, hundreds are rallying in the capital Dhaka against the police killing of 5 protesters a day earlier. A violent protest against a visit by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi rocked the country. The country has also deployed border guards to maintain law and order in several districts. Modi is in Bangladesh to attend its Golden Jubilee celebrations of independence. The protests, which began on Friday at the main mosque in Dhaka, spread to several key districts. Muslim groups have called for a day-long general strike on Monday. North Korea says US President Joe Biden has taken a wrong first step by criticizing Pyongyang's missile test. A Workers' Party official said the test was an act of self-defense against threats posed by South Korea. Central Committee Secretary Ri Pyong-chul said the US criticism revealed deep-seated hostility towards the North. In a statement, he expressed apprehension over Biden faulting the usual test fire as a violation of UN resolutions. Ri said Washington is provoking Pyongyang by branding it as a security threat. He warned Washington might face something unpleasant if it continues to make such remarks. The US has blocked Venezuela, the World Trade Organization, from proceeding with its dispute over Washington's sanctions. Earlier, Caracas requested the formation of a WTO panel to rule on whether US curbs breach global trading rules. In a statement, a US trade official called the request illegitimate. Adam Hodge said the administration of President Nicolas Maduro does not represent Venezuelans. He said Washington will reject any effort by Maduro to misuse WTO to attack US curbs aimed at restoring democracy. He said Peru, Brazil and Colombia backed the US position while Cuba and Russia sided with Venezuelans. The United States has invited China and Russia to participate in the Global Climate Summit. The Earth Day Summit is scheduled to take place from the 22nd to 23rd of April. The White House said Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin are among 40 world leaders invited. In a statement, it said a key goal will be to galvanize efforts to limit planetary warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It added the US will announce an ambitious 2030 target for reducing carbon emissions before the summit. Talking to reporters in Washington, President Joe Biden said he has not spoken to any of the two leaders individually. In Belarus, authorities have warned that the people participating in protests against President Alexander Lukashenko will be liable to criminal prosecution. The warning comes as authorities filed a case against social media publishers for inciting people to come out on the streets. Opposition figures have recently called on the public to ramp up protests once again after a 2-month quiet period. Protests are expected to start again on Saturday afternoon, though some detentions had already taken place. Thousands have been detained since the start of demonstrations in August last year, the biggest challenge to Lukashenko's rule. The Belarusian leader denies electoral fraud and has accused the West of sponsoring the protests. The U.S. says it has the capacity and the equipment to help Egypt with a massive cargo ship stuck in the Suez Canal. The 400-meter-long Ever Given ran aground in the vital trade waterway on Tuesday due to strong wind. Talking to reporters, President Joe Biden said Washington is considering what it can to do help Cairo. Earlier, a White House spokesperson said the U.S. is tracking the situation very closely as the blockage is taking toll on markets. A maritime traffic jam piled up more than 200 vessels outside the canal. Meanwhile, the blockage is holding up an estimated $9.6 billion worth of cargo each day between Asia and Europe. Authorities say efforts to free the ship may take weeks and can be complicated by unstable weather. Colombia says the car bomb explosion that injured 16 people in the country's southwest was a terrorist attack. In a televised address, President Ivan Duque said Bogota will continue to confront and pursue terrorism wherever it is. The car bomb attack rocked the rural Corinto district in the Cauca governorate. 3 of the wounded are in critical condition. The blast also caused extensive damage to the surrounding houses and businesses. Israeli forces have injured several Palestinians, including a child, in a crackdown on protesters in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian media says the Israeli army used stun grenades, rubber bullets and tear gas to break up the marches. It said the Palestinians were protesting against Israeli colonial settlements in villages across the occupied territories. Meanwhile, Israeli authorities handed over the body of a Palestinian man shot dead by settlers last month in Ramallah. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Ukraine says Moscow-backed separatists have killed 4 of its soldiers in shelling in the east of the country. In a statement, the army said 2 others were injured after the Russian Federation violated the ceasefire again. The army said separatists targeted its positions with mortars, automatic grenade launchers and machine guns. It says such moves were prohibited under the Minsk agreements. It said the Ukraine has reported the actions of Russian forces to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. 3 Russian nuclear submarines have conducted torpedo fighting from under the ice in the Arctic. The Russian Navy's Commander-in-Chief Nikolai Emenov said the shooting was part of Expedition Umka-21. The commander said the sophisticated maneuver was the first such in the history of the Russian Navy. The admiral added the submarines surfaced within a 300-meter radius and the ice they broke was 1.5 meters deep. The drill was held near Franz Joseph Land Archipelago in the Arctic Ocean. It was aimed at testing Russian military hardware in extreme weather conditions. A French government inquiry says France is guilty in the 1994 genocide in Rwanda and was blind to genocide preparations. At least 800,000 people were killed when ethnic Hutu extremists massacred minority Tutsi group and moderate Hutus. In its report, the Commission blames the then French President François Mitterrand for a failure of policy towards Rwanda. It said for a long time, France was involved with a regime that encouraged racist massacres. But the report said there was no evidence France was complicit in the killings. The Élysée Palace said it hopes the findings will mark an irreversible reconciliation process between France and Rwanda. Rwanda hailed the report as an important step towards a common understanding of France's role in the genocide. In Egypt, at least 5 people have died and 24 others were injured as a 13-story building collapsed in the capital, Cairo. Egyptian state media said civil defense and ambulance forces sifted through the debris in a search and rescue operation. Many people are still feared to be trapped under the rubble. The cause of the incident is not clear yet. The incident in Gizr al-Suez district comes hours after Egypt's Sohag city witnessed a train crash that claimed 32 lives. American children's book author Beverly Cleary has died at age 104. She created the feisty characters of Ramona Quimby and Henry Huggins. In a statement, her publisher HarperCollins said Cleary passed away at her home in Carmel, California. No cause of her death was given. Her first book, Henry Huggins, was published in 1950, immediately setting a standard for realistic children's fiction. Cleary wrote more than 40 books, with the last one penned in 1999. She is survived by two children, Malcolm and Marianne. An antique 15th century altarpiece has been finally restored after a decade-long process costing millions of dollars. It has been put in a permanent exhibition at St. Bavou's Cathedral in Belgian city Ghent. More in this report. From two world wars to 16th century iconoclasm and multiple thefts, this artwork has survived centuries of turmoil. Now it has gained a new bulletproof glass housing in Belgium as part of a $35.4 million revamp for visitors. The renowned Adoration of the Mystic Lamb was completed in 1432 by brothers Jan and Hubert van Eyck and is widely considered one of the most important pieces of early Renaissance art. The 12-paneled altarpiece has been put on display at the same cathedral in Belgium where it first stood after its completion. The visitors will pass through the crypt before viewing the panels, as an augmented reality experience will relate the piece's 600-year history. To accommodate tourists, the altarpiece is now exhibited in a larger chapel. Argentinian superstar Lionel Messi is a source of joy for football fans worldwide, so it is not so surprising to see his look-alike in Egypt attracting children at an orphanage in the city of Zagazig. This report has more.
Islam Bhatta has been using his resemblance to Barca footballer Lionel Messi for a good purpose. Seeing the excitement his presence causes at events, Bhatta is happy to wear a Barcelona shirt and take part in a game or two. The children at the orphanage swarm around him with delight.
This happiness is in one's heart. When I came to the orphanage, I felt an incomparable happiness. And the kids' happiness with the resemblance between me and Messi is indescribable. When you make someone happy, God rewards you. I wanted to share this happiness with them.
Muhammad Al Sayed, the director of orphanage, says Bhatta's visit gives children a morale boost.
We were happy to receive Mr. Islam today. He is Messi's look-alike. He is Messi of Al Sharqiya, not Messi of Barcelona. It gave a moral boost to the children. These visits help us to develop the children and discover their talents so that we can develop them. Our mission is to rehabilitate them and integrate them in the society.
Bhatta dreams of becoming an actor, and what's a better star to that than portraying the biggest name in the footballing world?
And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.